Good morning, Bucknutters. It's Thursday, June 25th, 2015. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning Five-ish. If it's Thursday, I can only mean one thing. The lovely and talented Steve Wiltfong is here, people, to spread some wisdom on recruiting and other things. Steve, how are you this fine morning?
Good morning, Daniel. Things are well in Indianapolis, although I'm sending storms your way, my friend.
Yeah, as I look out the window here, it's about to get here, which is a shame. We've had a couple of really good weather days, but the Gem City, 2 days of good weather means you're getting 3 days of terrible weather. So that's how it is here. But seriously, folks, Steve. Everybody follows Steve, of course, on Twitter. So this is old news. But I was looking at Twitter yesterday, thinking of ways to generate funds for my family. And Steve put out there a way for all of us to go to Vegas and make some money. You made a prediction of the number 1 and number 2 teams in all of college football for the season ahead. Number 1, not super surprised. Number 2, maybe. Who did you predict to be the number 1 and 2 teams in college football, Steve?
Well, first, this isn't the Vegas easy money, and we'll get to the Vegas easy money. And I said this at the end of last year, but I think the preseason top 2 in my unofficial poll that no one reads, I got the Buckeyes 1, and I got Michigan State 2. I love what Michigan State brings back as a football team at the quarterback position and on the offensive line. I think they have weapons at the skill position. Yes, they are bringing back some unfamiliar names at tailback to run the football behind that offensive line. And I like Cook at the quarterback position, his 3rd year at the starter. So I think they're really sound there, and he's a potential pro, obviously. And then you have on defense, they have, one of the best defensive lines in the country, several NFL guys there up front, whether that's in next year's draft with guys like Shalik Calhoun, Lawrence Marshall, maybe Ed Davis. But then down the road, you got guys like Malik McDowell, who I think is going to go in the first round. And so that defensive line is going to be really good, and people are going to say, well, yes, they lost a lot in the secondary, and certainly, but teams lose personnel all over. And Michigan State, I think that pass rush and that dominance in the trenches is going to help soften the blow of what they've lost in the secondary. And I think at this point, Michigan State has gotten to where they're a culture, and they bring a toughness. People say that Baylor kind of crapped the bed in that bowl game, and I look at it and say, well, hell, Michigan State hung in there, stayed gritty, and came back and won what was essentially a road game, because it was a road game in Texas. Beating Baylor down there certainly wasn't an easy task. And they found a way to do it by scoring a ton of points. So I think they're a team that finds ways to win football games. And I thought that Michigan State was arguably the second best team in the country last year, and I know we've talked about that on the Bucknuts Morning Five, and they lost at Oregon early in the season. And kudos to Oregon for winning that football game. And but I don't think the better team won that day. I think Michigan State was taking it to Oregon for most of that game. They had a couple pre-snap blunders that, unfortunately happened to them early in the season, and that Oregon hit some big plays on, and then Mariota, proved why he won the Heisman by making some plays in that ball game that were Heisman-esque. So salute to them, but I think Michigan State would have handled Oregon late in the year. And that's why I think Ohio State was so dominant in the postseason. I thought the Big Ten was a better league than most people give it credit for. I thought Ohio State was playoff ready, playing against some of the physical teams they played against, had them ready for Alabama. Penn State didn't have a great offense last year. They played with less than 50 scholarship players, but that defense was physical as hell, and they really got into Ohio State there in the night game on the road for the Buckeyes, and Michigan State. Ohio State went up there and really just played an outstanding football game and got a win. And Michigan, certainly their coaching staff got let go because it wasn't a great year, but they also had a hard-hitting defense that played tough. And so Ohio State was ready, and I think it's a credit to the league, and I think the league is going to be better this year, and I think the best 2 teams in the country going into the season are in the Big Ten.
Okay, clearly I wouldn't have set this whole deal up if I didn't agree with you, but let me play devil's advocate here and say, Steve Wiltfong, you cover the Midwest, which is essentially the Big Ten.
I live in the Midwest.
And right, and your gig with us is director of recruiting, but you cut your teeth in the Midwest.
No question.
You're just biased towards the Midwest. There's no way two teams in the Big Ten can be better than two teams in the SEC. What do you say to that?
Well, I'd say the third best team is probably not in the SEC, TCU. And listen, this is subjective. If someone came in and said, Steve, you're crazy, TCU is the best team in the country, I could see it. You know what I'm saying? And Alabama and Auburn, and yeah, you can make arguments for all those teams, but I just really think that Ohio State and Michigan State are damn good, and those are who I'm arguing for. But yeah, certainly it's not point blank. These are the best two teams, and they're going to play in the regular season. Then we look forward to seeing them play again in the playoff. I understand that there's teams that are worthy of also being listed in the top two, but those are the teams that I like, and maybe I am a little partial to them. And I watched both those teams play pretty much every game last year. I got a great setup here at my house where I'm able to watch multiple games. And so I've seen those teams play a lot. I'm familiar with them, but I'm watching CBS. I'm watching that Pac-12 game at 10 p.m. local time at night. So I'm watching a lot of ball, and those are the two teams I like right now. But we need to get to the easy money before we forget, because we could forget. So the easy money, and I don't even know if this was a Vegas thing, Dan. I just saw Sean Shear, I think it was from Spartan Tailgate, or someone retweeted an ESPN thing saying they had Michigan State in at 9.5, and I just don't. Fine, maybe you don't think they're a top two team, but they're going to win more than 9.5 games. Okay, so that is Vegas. I just saw 9.
No, I'm saying no. What I'm saying, I want to explain to everyone what you're talking about. Vegas sets over/unders on for those non-gambling types, all three of you. Vegas sets a line, meaning going into the season, how many games they will predict a team will win. And they say over/under, then you have to bet over or under. And you're saying what you saw, and I think I saw the same. Vegas over/under on wins for Michigan State is 9.5.
9.5. So they got them losing 3.
Right.
And I don't see it unless their quarterback goes down, Cook. And even if Cook goes down, I'm hearing great things about Damian Terry. But you look, I think Michigan State is going to take it to Oregon. So they got Oregon at home in a night game on September 12th. But that's a potential L, I suppose. But I think with what Oregon lost, and I think Michigan State's a better football team than them anyway, I got the Spartans over Oregon in September. But, for the sake of argument, let's say they lose that game. So they lose that game, and they lose at the Shoe on November 21st. Who else are they losing to? I mean, at Nebraska, perhaps. November 7th, that's, in my opinion, the third trickiest game on the schedule. They're at Michigan, but they own Michigan right now, and they're going to be, and they're not going to feel that way going in, with Michigan getting a new coach. They're going to want to roll in there and make another statement, and they love beating the Wolverines, and that staff loves beating the Wolverines, and that's just a big game for them. And then, the Penn State game at home on the 28th, I like where Penn State's trending, but I don't think they'll be ready for Michigan State this year.
Yeah, I think, and I've said this before, we're going to get to Ohio State recruiting here in a bit, people, so chill. But I think if I had to assess the Big Ten in general right now, like you said, there's some other teams making a run, but it's Ohio State, Michigan State, and then everybody else. The gap between 2 and 3 is considerable. Okay, so there's your easy money, people. Ohio State number 1, Michigan State number 2. Yes, we think there's a gap, and I'm not going to answer for Steve. Obviously, Ohio State's going to be number 1. I don't think Michigan State will be number 2, but at some point in time of the year, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. Hopefully, the week leading up to when they play does maximize the power points to your Buckeyes. But let's talk recruiting. There was a crystal ball flip this week, Steve, that even though I'm the host of the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Talk to You Weekly, kind of caught me off guard. Andrew Pryts, defensive back and legacy out of for Penn State, out of the Pittsburgh, or I think the Pennsylvania area. You crystal balled him to Ohio State. Make your case.
Well, I heard the Buckeyes were the team to beat. And Tom Loy from our Notre Dame site actually kind of helped put me on the scent. Now, I knew that Ohio State coveted Pryts, and we just kind of didn't really talk about it. But, you know, over the last month, I gathered that he was a top-of-the-board guy. Urban Meyer's involved in his recruitment. My crystal ball was Penn State legacy. Everything I'm hearing from, you know, the Penn State sources is they thought they were, you know, at the very least in it. But talking to Loy, you know, was first to kind of uncover it was an Ohio State-Notre Dame deal. And then I did some digging and, you know, found out the Buckeyes are the team to beat. But Notre Dame's certainly in it. Went out and visited Stanford. Stanford's always a potential game-changing visit. So I expect them to stay in Big Ten or Notre Dame country. And so right now I haven't heard anything different to make me think he's not going to Ohio State. If you needed a confidence on where I have my crystal ball with Pryts, it's certainly nowhere near where I have with a Nick Bosa. But I think Ohio State's got a really good shot to land him, and they definitely want him in this class, and they think that he's a potential difference maker for them in the secondary, and we think he's a really good player at 24/7 Sports. We have him in our top 247. I don't think any other outlet has him as high as us, and so we're excited about him as a player, and Ohio State's excited about him potentially being in their class.
Rashan Gary is widely considered the number one player in the class. For anybody who questions that, I suggest they go and watch some of his video. There's video of him there at a camp, in a camp setting with no pads. That's as dominant as I've ever seen someone in one of those situations, which is impressive. But, excuse me, hold on a second. He's going to be on campus today. Yeah, he's going to be on campus today. And I'll say, up until now, I haven't even spent a whole lot of time thinking of Gary. I thought he was kind of a long shot for the Buckeyes. But let me present a little argument for him here. Like we said, it's going to be the year of the Buckeye for the draft. You're going to see Joey Bosa, defensive lineman, drafted in the top X number of picks. I think his brother is going to follow him to Ohio State. Adolphus Washington's leaving. They're going to have no real standout returning defensive tackles on the board. Gary's going to have a chance to come in here, play early for the two-time defending national champions next to Jonathan Cooper and Bosa as defensive ends, which I think would set up a defensive tackle better than anybody. Is this a case where if Ohio State just waits it out, they'll become the most attractive place for Rashan Gary?
Well, Rashan's going to think he can play early anywhere, and he probably can, regardless of who he chooses, whether that's Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are kind of five that I know are in it, and he's going to play as a freshman. We're just talking what's the difference in snap number. You know, could he play more snaps at Ohio State with what they're losing compared to maybe what Auburn's losing without looking at Auburn's depth chart? Maybe, but I think his decision is a long way away, so everyone's going to have to wait it out. You know, he's going to take his officials and announce on National Signing Day most likely. So Ohio State's in it. They've always been in it. He's been there multiple times. Larry Johnson is someone that the family really trusts. They've known him for a long time, dating back to when he was at Penn State recruiting Rashan, when Rashan was, you know, just becoming who he is now. So Ohio State has that going for him. A lot of different things going on here with Gary's recruitment. So impossible for me to project where he's going to go right now. I don't even know if I have a crystal ball in on him. I may have put one in a long time ago on Alabama or USC because they were kind of the projected early favorites. But right now, I have no idea what he's going to do. I just know Ohio State's one of the schools in the mix.
I guess my point is, of the schools in the mix, I think his opportunity to play will be greatest at Ohio State, which is rare. I can't think of anywhere on the roster that's going to turn over like this, except you could maybe make an argument at tight end going forward. But there are more young tight ends on the roster than I even like of the young defensive tackles. So I think Ohio State's going to win every game between now and then. So every other team that's recruiting him is going to lose. So hopefully for Ohio State that will help with the marketing, and Rashan Gary can come and step in. And Bosa and him, the next Bosa and Gary as freshmen would be something special.
Well, it's, I think that Gary knows everything he needs to know about the program. Urban Meyer, Larry Johnson, obviously Ohio State's coming off a championship. Just another opportunity for him to, get around the guys, see how he fits in with guys in the locker room, maybe build some reports with some players at Ohio State. That just makes him more comfortable with the Buckeyes. So it's, harder for him to say no to OSU when he does make that decision a long ways from now. And so that's what I'd be interested in hearing about, just who did he connect with on this visit, because he already feels good about Larry Johnson and Urban Meyer, and obviously Ohio State's track record on the field is they're the defending champs.
I know you weren't there, but I want to finish the call talking about last week. Everything you're hearing about the satellite camp Ohio State had in Florida was a success?
Well, yeah, that's like the perfect kind of satellite camp, because Ohio State actually has a chance to go into Florida and take guys away from Florida State and Florida. And for instance, the Michigan satellite camp was real fruitful. They got a chance to evaluate guys that they wanted, and they committed them, right? But if Alabama or Auburn's offering an in-state kid, they're going to be damn tough to beat. And that's even for, Ohio State. So if you want to have a satellite camp in Alabama, your sole purpose of doing that is to try and find a guy that's maybe overlooked by those two and go on them. But for Ohio State to go into Florida, they can win recruiting battles there against Florida and Florida State for whatever reason. I don't know, it's just a different, that the pulse in that state allows you to win recruiting battles where it's tough to go into Alabama and beat Alabama and Auburn. It doesn't matter who you are, USC, Ohio State. It's just going to be tough to win those. So the satellite camp there is awesome. If Ohio State did one in Atlanta, I think that could be fruitful for them. Those are two places that I think Ohio State, it would be advantageous for them to do satellite camps. But other than that, I think that just having kids come to their campus is still the way to go. And they've obviously had some really good campers come in, and they will for Friday Night Lights also. But certainly it looked pretty cool for them to go down to Florida, and like I said, them doing one in Atlanta could be good for them. And hell, them doing one maybe in like Pittsburgh or in Pennsylvania could maybe be something that they could hit, would be good for them, or Washington, D.C. I don't know how that works. But those are four places, now that I'm on a roll here, where a satellite camp for Ohio State could be beneficial. But again, I still think the big thing is getting kids to your campus, and because that's the hook.
No doubt. I'm going to have Rashan Gary on campus today. We'll have a complete report on that as soon as we're able to contact the Gary camp. Steve, we appreciate your joining us. Have a great day, Bucknuts.